This podcast does not provide medical advice. Please listen to the complete disclosure at the end of the recording.
Hello, and welcome to Everyone Dies. I'm Marianne Mazzo.
And I am Charlie Navarrete.
So, everybody, go grab yourself a piece of cake. This is medicinal cake. Death by chocolate. Can't listen to a death podcast if you're not eating death by chocolate or something else that's equally bad for you. Get yourself your favorite drink. And let's see, Charlie, what are you eating?
Well, I do have, this chocolate cake is going to kill me. So it's a 2-layer chocolate cake, homemade from a local bakery. Frosting is just great. Yeah.
Do you need to be alone for a minute?
Yes. So from a local bakery, everything is homemade. It's cool. It's been refrigerated. So when you take it home, or when I take it home, I always just let it sit out on the counter almost to room temperature before I enjoy it.
Melt all the fat that's in it so that you can taste every calorie.
That's the reason why. So I had to decide I would have a glass of milk with it, and almost out of milk. So unfortunately, then I had to choose.
First world problems you have.
Yeah. So
what are you going to drink?
Well, I had to choose either between bourbon or whiskey, and I decided to go with the whiskey.
Excellent choice.
So what do you have?
I have Diet Pepsi, zero sugar.
Oh, to go with that 0-calorie cake. Okay.
Yes, and fantasies of death by chocolate.
Oh.
But I love recipes, and I have a recipe for our listeners that Sandy can post on the our webpage. It's death by chocolate cake. So everybody make it and tell me how good it is.
Can I just go and buy another, please? Okay, yeah, I'll be sure I'll do my homework, and I'll make it too.
Yeah, I can see this in your small New York apartment.
Yes.
I don't think so. So, Charlie, there's a saying when you're teaching in college that those who can do, those who can't do teach, and those who can't teach do research. And when I was thinking about...
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I heard what I learned was those who can't teach gym.
Yes, that's true. If I guess you're high school, grade school.
Yeah.
But in college, they don't let anybody teach gym, so there you have it. So when I was thinking about how to introduce myself to our listeners, I thought, well, I think it's probably an important thing to know that the people that are talking to you about this pretty delicate subject have degrees in the area. I've written a book on palliative care nursing that's in its, I think, 5th edition now. I've been a nurse for 44 years, have a PhD in gerontology. But all throughout that, I always worked as a nurse because that is really where my heart has been, is taking care of people. And so and then when I kind of got toward the end of my career, probably about the last 5 years before I retired, I went to full-time taking care of patients, working in oncology. And that just really kind of got me back to where I felt comfortable, where I felt like I was contributing. And it I think, makes me a better teacher to be able to say, here are the clinical situations I've been in. Here's the problems that we face in this, healthcare environment. So that's what I've done for the last 44 years. What have you been doing, Charlie?
Well, initially I started in New York acting. Some local plays, here in the city. Went on a few national tours.
National tours of what?
Man of La Mancha. The last thing I did was City of Angels. It was a musical, and I played detective.
Columbo?
Yeah, that's right, Detective Columbo. No, Lieutenant. Well, the lieutenant. But by this time, I had gotten married, and my wonderful son was born. And spending 4-6 months on the road with a newborn just wasn't going to cut it.
No, I can see that.
So I hung up my tutu and ballet slippers and found as my parents like to say, a real job, working as a paralegal in a law office. We specialized in asbestos. Well, not specializing in asbestos, rather asbestos bankruptcy cases. Eventually, I was told by the powers that be to leave my desk and go out and interview people who were dying from mesothelioma. Marianne, are you familiar with mesothelioma?
Well, I am, but I'm not sure our listeners are, so why don't you tell us both?
Basically, it is a cancer, and you get this cancer from exposure to asbestos. And you die. There's no cure for it. So I began to interview people literally dying to gather the information so they could represent them in court. And from the beginning, first client, this gentleman was in an oxygen tank, real bad shape. Said, Charlie, I'll give you like $200 if you'll just pull the plug. And
wow.
And I said, I'm sorry, I can't. I can't do it for less than $500. and it was great. His wife looked at me horrified and then just started to laugh. And then he started to laugh. And it just made everything normal, which is what you and I are working on. It's just to normalize the process of death and dying.
Well, we've been trying to be normal all our lives.
Yeah, that hasn't always worked. And the thing of it was, with each patient, each client, really had a question about a will, about a healthcare proxy, wills, estates. What information I didn't have, I would find out about it, and I would have them contact someone at the law office. But I became well educated about end-of-life issues and what people were going through. And so here I am with you.
Well, and what a good combo. Charlie and I have known each other since we were, 21?
When I was 21.
I should have known better than to say that.
Sorry, yes. Yeah, actually about that, yes.
Yeah. And we're not 21 anymore.
No. Not for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good.
So we've been wanting to work together because we worked together when we were 21 at the University of Michigan. And all these years later, we've finally back to where we started, Charlie. Working together.
Yeah. But no.
Curb your enthusiasm.
Yeah, curb my enthusiasm.
Try not to hyperventilate.
No, but I'm just thinking hopefully, well, not hopefully, but, wiser, more experienced. Yeah. Yes. So
we are, did I tell you what we're going to talk about today?
No.
We're going to talk about today. Well, I'm going to talk about today. Why do people die? And so for our second half of our program, we're going to do a little bit of an exploration of why do people die? So for our second half, we're going to talk about why do people die? I mean, really, if we had a choice, most of us would probably choose not to die. But
yeah, but are people creative enough and interested in things enough to, remain active and interested for another 50 years?
Well,
like
that assumes that they're interested and active now, right? I mean, how many people do you see that, kind of fritter away their life thinking it's going to last forever?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, human beings are built to eventually die. We're not built to last forever. But all throughout history, people have wondered, well, why do we have to die? So some people have sort of a religious view. It's seen as a punishment for sin. The idea being that all people die because they all sin. It goes back to Adam and Eve and God being annoyed about that apple and said, now you're mortal, now you sin, now you'll die. Other religions, Islamic scholars and within Christianity too, have this vision of a judgment day, that everybody tastes death and you'll be judged by how evil or how good you are. It wasn't until probably around the time of Galileo that there was this view that maybe death was something that we could control, that with science, we could figure out how not to die. And there were many scientists who tried all kinds of different things, starvation, being packed in snow, to try to avoid dying. But it didn't work. Everybody died.
Right.
Science gave us penicillin and C-sections for babies who get stuck on the way out, immunizations. All of those things can help prevent death for a time, but none of those things make us immortal. So we can put it off, but we can't put it off forever.
Exactly. You can run, but you can't hide.
That's it. Within Buddhism and Hinduism, there's this idea about reincarnation, that, you die, but you come back, and you come back in your next life. And what and how you come back in the next life is based on how you act now. And so, I've seen people, Hindus, who will at the end of life not take their pain medicine, for example, because they want to suffer as much as they can in this life. So that when they come back in their next life, they're in a better position. So that kind of accounts or gives us a reason for why we might be suffering in this life, is so that we can have a better life the next time around, depending on your religious views. So all throughout human history, we've had issues with bad sanitation. And of course, we didn't have immunizations. We had poor nutrition. But in the United States, that started changing around 1910. And we have started having a lot more older people, in the last 25, 30 years, not for any other reason except that they didn't die when they were born. They didn't die in childbirth. Those are the things that will impact whether or not we're able to live to old age.
And what do you attribute that to?
Well, to science. Because around 1910, World War I period, there were increases in better sanitation. People were washing their hands before they went to help women give birth. Nutrition improved. So these are factors that contributed to that period of time beginning to lower the infant mortality rate. By the time us baby boomers came around, they kind of had that down to a pretty good science. We had, going to get our immunizations. And I can remember in kindergarten, them lining us up and giving us, I don't know what it was, whichever one it was, but giving us our shots in school, because that was part of the immunization process. Understanding about what foods were good for you and what foods were not good for you. And having enough money and enough access to good food so that kids ate well. The other piece of it, again, is that they didn't die while they were being born. There was better obstetrical care. Women survived. The babies survived. And then we're all here to be able to grow old. So prior to about 1900, the infant mortality rate was really, really high. And over time, like I said, through the Industrial Revolution, conditions changed and the baby survived. In the early